We are excited about this raise. It's a great validation for what we have been building, great validation for the demand that we are seeing, the acceleration we are seeing in our business. The company will be valued at $5.5 billion in this raise. It's the $240 million raise in the company. They're growing 50% plus every year, 250 million plus in ARR. There are a lot of companies and products where LLMs do 80-90% of the job. And now it's like, that is your primary cost that you become like just a layer on top of this. In our case is very different. Like LLMs only do like 10 to 20% of what we do. The amount of work that we have been doing on top of the LLMs is where our primary value prop is. I'm Jyoti Bansal, founder and CEO at Harness. You're watching Macro Talk with Hope.
Jyoti, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Congratulations. This is a very big raise. And I feel like what the story is here is that there's conviction, not only in what you've built over the last almost decade, but in what really developers need and companies need. So I would love for you to start big picture and help me understand, help everyone who is watching and listening understand what this new investment will enable Harness to do.
Yeah. So let me start with the big picture of what Harness does. When you think of software engineering, it's core of everything that happens in the society, from airlines and banking and retail. Like software code is behind a lot of things now. But only the first 30-40% of software engineering times is the coding. People think software engineering is all about writing code. But that's the first step. But you have the 60 to 70% of the time in software engineering is testing and securing and deploying and optimizing what we call everything after code, all the tasks you have to do. And that's where Harness is bringing AI and automation. We have been bringing automation at it for the last many years. And now the last couple of years, we are bringing Agentic AI and AI agents to drive that automation and efficiencies around that 70% of the software engineering work, testing, security, deployment, compliance. So, with this funding, we are very excited to bring in another $240 million, $200 million in the company, $40 million for our employees, in a secondary tender as well. And, it will allow us to accelerate our innovation in AI and also our investments in go-to-market.
But also rewarding the employees who have helped you build to this point.
Definitely, we all build this together. That's that's the most powerful thing about like building startups and the equity awards that our employees get, and it's really fulfilling to see that our employees are able to to get some liquidity now.
Yeah, and I think well, I'll just ask you now. Do you have plans to go public at some point?
Yes, we do. Many people will kind of beat around the bush on it. Yes, but that's we have talked publicly about it. I've talked publicly about it many times. That's what we're building for. We do think it's a massive opportunity in the problem we are solving. We're building a very big platform for software engineering. And yes, we do want to go public. That's the path we are on. We can't control the timing of it. There's a lot of factors involved, from markets to how we do things, but that's the path we want to build for.
And I think we'll get back to this in a little bit because I want to run through all the stakeholders. I think what's most fascinating for me about your story is that, you combined Traceable into Harness, the parent company now. And, you've talked about on other podcasts, the inner loop, the outer loop, and really how Harness is this unified agent. Just like Gen AI, when it first came out, people were shoehorning it in, or they were just talking about it maybe to get some press. You're seeing agentic come up a lot now with other companies and platforms. Share with us, if you were to make a general metaphor of where agentic really plays a role on the back end of development, what would you say? I was thinking about like a Russian nesting doll for your company of all the agents underlying the main one talking to each other. Maybe there's a better analogy or metaphor that you could share.
The analogy I like to use is like a factory assembly line. If the code that the developers write, and they're using AI to help with that now, and that's called the inner loop of software engineering. That's the first 30% of the time. But when the code comes in, code is kind of this unfinished material. This unfinished material now has to go through a factory assembly line to convert into a finished product. A finished product, when you write a software code, it could be available for like hundreds of millions of consumers. Like say if you're online banking, like, the change you make would be available to like hundreds of millions of consumers. So it has to be perfect. You cannot take a chance on like quality and security and anything, right? So now in that assembly line, you have like 20, 25 different stations, 7 different kinds of testing of the code, different practices, unit testing, load testing, API testing, stress testing, 8 different kinds of security tasks like, code security, open source security, supply chain security, API security. You have a lot of deployment tasks that you have to do, code deployment, infrastructure deployment, database deployment. You have to do a lot of optimization tasks on like, cost optimization of cloud data. So many things that happen in the assembly line. Historically, people will do them like, software engineers will do them, manually or through scripts, etc. Now think of like, we are AI robots. AI robots are those our AI agents who are doing those tasks for you. So, and we have this one unified AI, like a master robot or like what we call a unified agent that's kind of working with all the other AI robots to do all those 25, 30 different tasks that need to be done in the assembly line. And these tasks are a big part of the software engineering work that we can automate.
And what is the importance of having that?
So the impact is pretty massive. If you look at our customers, we had a large bank who published this study recently that they used to take about 3 to 4 weeks when a developer write code, and by the time the code goes into production in the hands of the consumers, now that whole process is down to less than an hour. Like the 3 to 4 week process that was like, so many manual steps on security and compliance and testing that everything has to be done like manually. There is back and forth between different engineers trying to, communicate, collaborate, filing tickets with each other and all kind of things. We can automate all of that into this automated pipeline or automated assembly line in the factory. And now the down less than an hour. So you can see the productivity gain, and the quality and security improves because you're not, leaving anything to chance. You're not making mistakes. It's an entire automated process.
But for what I'm understanding from what you talked about, we're not comfortable enough to have AI actually deploy. At what stage of this entire cycle will we get there? What will it take for humans to be comfortable?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with AI to create this automated assembly line that humans can review and audit, which is what we are providing right now. Like, that's what most people want. We actually tell people like, if you are a bank with like hundreds of millions of consumers, you don't want AI to go and deploy in production. You want AI to create a assembly line or a automated factory that can go in production, that you go and audit. And because if you are a large bank, you have to give it to like the federal government. You're audited, everything has to be audited and everything has to be compliant. But AI can do all of that work to create this automated process for you. And at some point in time, yes, you can have parts of it where you don't even need to audit. You can completely rely on AI to do this on the fly. And I do think that it will take some time. The step one is that AI to create all of this, that humans are in the loop involved.
But we'll get there, right? One day.
Well, I think we'll get there at some way. Like, I do think the world would need two AIs though. You have AI to write code and AI for check and balances. Sometimes people ask me like, why can't it just be one AI do all of this? It's kind of like, you can't have accountants and auditors do, the same people. Like, you need accountants who will do the work and you have auditors to making sure like it's all accurate and good. That's the check and balance in the society. Same thing with like software engineering. Like, you need like some AI helping software engineers to do the do the coding work, and some AI making sure that it all works well. Like, that's what we call like, we are the safety harness for all the AI code. We are the, we'll make sure like it all works, and we'll stop it. Like, something doesn't work, that's what the pipeline is about. Like, something doesn't work, we'll stop it, make sure nothing is going to break.
Well, it's a good name. And so now that we've laid the groundwork for folks who may be less familiar with what your stack is and what your differentiation is, let's talk more about this raise, the valuation, and what it signifies to you. What does it say about the market? What does it say about your enterprise clients in between?
Yeah. So, we are excited about this raise. It's a great validation for what we have been building, great validation for the demand that we are seeing, the acceleration we are seeing in our business. The company will be valued at $5.5 billion in this raise. It's the $240 million raise in the company. Our business is growing very well. We are growing 50% plus every year, 250 million plus in ARR. But a significant increase in like how we are being able to help these large enterprises. There is so much awareness around how do I bring AI to do things better and do more efficiency in software engineering. And people are realizing that coding is just the first step, and you have all this work after coding. How do you bring AI to it? So we are seeing very a significant boost in our business. There is acceleration in our growth rate. We have a lot of very successful customers. Like, big question that people always ask me is, Is AI real? Is it like the results real? The results are, real on like people are getting coding productivity gains, but the coding productivity gains doesn't mean you're shipping more software as a business. But we are being able to improve that heavily. Like, some of our customers like United Airlines, about like, they've cut down their, all the work the engineers do around deployments by 75%. National Bank of Australia, all the work they do about troubleshooting failures on builds and all, they've cut it down by 85%. You have so in Morningstar, they are doing all their build and test process 5 times faster than they were doing before. So we focus a lot on delivering real world results to like real large enterprises with a lot of complexity.
So we're going to switch back and forth between talking about Harness specifically, but also, the main reason why I was excited to have you on the show is to have you also weigh in on what is happening at the macro level and stories that we've seen dominate headlines and attention. And one of those is this MIT report that came out in the summer, which says that 95% of enterprise Gen AI pilots fail to deliver measurable ROI. But what you're saying sounds different. So share with us the difference between what's working today, what's not working today, and then what will ultimately maybe all work in the future if, we're still too early. This MIT study is still just maybe a slice of what's actually going on overall.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, the reason you saw that data from the MIT study is people think of just one part of the process. If you want to get AI efficiency, especially with AI agents helping you with software engineering, you have to look at the process in aggregate, which is like, you have coding, you have everything that's happening after coding. And if the bottleneck shifts to everything that's happening after coding, you're not going to get the efficiency, out of it. And that applies to other things as well. Like, if you move the bottleneck from one place to another, you didn't really, got the efficiencies out of it. And that's what we are seeing. Like, we are in this early phase of it. The second major challenge that, most companies haven't fully solved and trying to figure out, is how do you get AI to be contextual for them? Let's say if you go to ChatGPT and ask like some question about you work in a bank and you ask a question about, I want to build something for my bank here. ChatGPT will give you a generic answer, like, which is nothing to do with your bank. And every company has like their institutional knowledge, their ways of doing things, which is like, their security policies, their governance policies, their infrastructure, their services, their developer, their organizational model, their historical, knowledge, all the kind of things that happen. Without that context, AI is not usable for any particular business. So at Harness, like the reason we show all the success studies that I talked about, like United Airlines and Morningstar and National Australia Bank and all, we focus heavily on context. That is all, and we call it like the enterprise knowledge graph. Like, the core secret sauce that we have is that we create the knowledge graph of any enterprise, which understands everything about their business. And now our AI agents are using that understanding of their business and customizing and contextualizing the AI for them. So that's when it becomes usable and accurate. Otherwise, it's kind of generic things that you can't really use in practice.
Are agents already writing new agents?
Agents can write new agents, yes.
Yeah. In Harness, is that already something that you're building for?
Yes, we are building for it. We are also helping people deploy and test these agents that are being built. Agents are, there's a lot of noise around agent, but really agents are like a coordinated way to use the LLMs and like, and that's what we will see. Like, if you just give a very big prompt to an LLM, it's never going to be accurate, and the context is not right. So you have to break it into smaller tasks and give the smaller task and coordinate the entire process. That's what the agents are about. Yes, agents can create more agents for sure.
Well, I'm just trying to tie it with what you're saying, with what companies need, which is contextual services for them. And so I'm wondering, is that part of the value proposition that you offer, is that your agents are smart enough to build new agents inside of these companies once they're deployed to continue to get better over time?
Yes, a lot of it, how do you get better is about context. It's like what you would hear in the world of AI, especially enterprise AI. The foundational models are foundational models. They do their things. They will keep getting better and better. But for an enterprise to get value out of any foundational model, it's all about the context that they have, their information, right? So what we are getting better is we are capturing more and more context. Like, so the more things you do with our AI agents,
Right.
we capture the context. And now the more context we have, our agents get better in doing more things. So there is that kind of a network effect that happens inside every enterprise that as the more they use us.
Right. I mean, it's like life or jobs. You get out what you put in, right? And it compounds. I think what's also, I think, fascinating to me when you talk about building these agents is that you build on top of different LLMs, right? Harness does.
Yes.
So you build on top of all of them, correct? Gemini and
OpenAI,
ChatGPT,
Anthropic.
OpenAI, Gemini. Yeah, but I guess I'm bringing those two up specifically because this year there was a huge reversal in sort of where the horses are racing. And for a long time, OpenAI and ChatGPT seemed to be the market leader. There was a big shift this year, late this year. When you see that happening, even on like the consumer level or the perception of it, is that something you've already experienced? As they've been deploying for you guys at the enterprise level. So had you already seen the shift coming?
When we use LLMs, like it's a factor of what we're asking LLM to do. So you have to optimize the right LLM that you want to use for accuracy, cost, and speed. That's what our engineers figure out. Okay, for this particular purpose, this is the right one. For this purpose, this is the right one. At any point of time, you are looking at what's the right LLM to use. And it's great to see the competition, and it's great to see the innovation that's happening on the foundation LLM. We want competition. We want the Google and OpenAI and Anthropic and Microsoft and all to compete with each other and build the best foundational LLMs. At Harness, what we are building is the domain AI on top of that. The domain AI, our domain is DevOps, DevSecOps, like software engineering. And the domain AI is not about foundational LLMs for us. The LLMs exist, we use them. It for us is all about purpose-built agents for all the different tasks and the context for an enterprise, and how we use the context of the purpose-built agents to orchestrate the entire process.
Yeah, I totally understand. And where I'm going with this is really, you built Harness, you came out of stealth in like 2017. This is pre-Gen AI. And now as you're building on top of these LLMs, these foundational models, with each of their own strengths and weaknesses, how do you mitigate the risk that ultimately bubbles up to your layer? And for your for your own engineers, how are they keeping track of what those strengths and weaknesses are? As it's just, you can clearly see from this year, the development pace and the success is very uneven.
Let me start by just saying that when Harness was launched in stealth, launched out of stealth in 2017, the headline in press at that time was Harness brings artificial intelligence to continuous delivery, which is the software delivery part of it. This was 2017, much before LLMs and generative AI. And we were at the forefront of AI research and AI work for DevOps since then, and it was neural nets and other things at that time. The way we keep up with is a lot of expertise around AI for DevOps related domains. But a lot of it is experimentation that you're constantly doing. You also have to operationalize how you use AI from a software engineering perspective, which is it's called evaluations. You're constantly instrumenting, you're evaluating, you're assessing the data. It's not hard to switch from one LLM to another. So it's like the switching cost is very, very low. If you see our engineers see this LLM is giving us better results at better performance, we switch from one to another. We want to build the best AI that works very well for our customers. And and we don't really care what's underneath, what's LLM underneath.
I did not know that it wasn't. I didn't realize that there was kind of a low switching cost. I would assume that once you're entrenched with one, especially with the proprietary data that some of these foundation models are consuming inside of a client, that it would be hard. Why is that my perception?
Well, first of all, we would never let our customers' proprietary data be consumed by the foundational LLM. So and most LLM providers, they provide these zero data retention agreements, so which we have with OpenAI, Anthropic, Google. So when we are working with an enterprise client and we are calling the APIs of Gemini or Anthropic or OpenAI, we make sure our client's data is not retained by them. We have the legal agreements signed with these providers. So for us, it's about using the enterprise context for the LLMs to do the job. Now it's like, how you call LLMs is through APIs. And if some, one model is giving us better results, we'll switch from one model to another. But a lot of like, sophisticated engineering organizations and teams like ours, you normally don't call the LLM directly. You create like some layer in between. So it's easy to switch. Like, so you like from our code, which we have like millions of lines of code, we are not like calling like one model all over our millions of lines of code. So it's hard to change. Everything is funneling through like one interface layer, so we can switch from one to another. But most advanced engineering teams are doing techniques like these, and that's what we do as well, like, which allows us to experiment and move things and provide the best, to our customers.
I think that's a very important distinction, at least for a consumer. I'm obviously consumer level. I'm not a pro or enterprise level.
But even at the consumer level, you would think like, I use, I have everything, I use, all the different, I use ChatGPT, I use Claude, I use, Gemini now. And the same question I may ask multiple providers, like, and like even as a consumer, because like some things I get better response from ChatGPT, something I get better response from Claude, something I get better response from Gemini, and it's totally fine. That's what we want. We want competition. I do that as consumer, and we do that as API consumer in our products as well.
Well, that makes me feel better. I do the same thing, but it does get very expensive, as you know.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, if you could generalize, I know this is, kind of a tough question. What would you say the strengths are for each of the LLMs that you're using and what they're good at that you've observed?
You mean for the foundational models?
Yes.
It changes frequently. And
Why does it change frequently?
Because they're all working on improving their models, and they're not like, which is massive investments that are going in, a lot of AI research going in. Yes, like Anthropic have a better model on something, and then OpenAI will try to make a better, and then Google will. It's just great, like, So I think for anyone trying to say, okay, this is the winner, and you may be wrong in 6 months, like, which is, and I think that is the right thing for the society, right thing for the whole world. So I would not like say this one is better, and these are not like sustainable long-term. Someone has gotten so far ahead, like, let's say Google has great model with their new Gemini work. Can other folks catch up over time? Likely they will do their attempt and they will catch up, and then maybe Google will do something else, and all of that is good. Flexibility is important, and the choice is important, and choice is great, like options and choice, and is always a good thing.
Something that I also want to get to you with this fluctuation as you're optimizing, as they're changing and updating, is where the risks are, and who ultimately bears that risk. And I was talking to a small business owner who is starting to experiment, right? Building, vibe coding, whatever. They're building on top of these models, and they have a fear, like, what if the LLM like gets it wrong, but I'm using it and the consumer, like, something happens. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a very high risk, and people sometimes underestimate that. You cannot rely on LLM. In the engineering world, you will hear the word like deterministic versus non-deterministic.
Yes.
Deterministic, you get the same answer every time. Non-deterministic, you get different answer anytime. And LLMs are fundamentally non-deterministic, so you may get a different answer, and the models are changing, and all things are changing, and all that. So now, as a business, you don't want non-determinism as a business. You don't want like the same thing happens like 5 different ways, 5 different times. So you have to build that layer on top of that. And that's where, like, when it comes to software engineering, companies like Harness can help. Like, the coding is one part, but the vibe coding is not going to create an app that you can completely rely on in a deterministic way. A layer like Harness on top of it to make sure that it's working, is secure, is high quality, it's like, nothing changes, it passes all the tests that you would want. So what you would do is, like, in a layer like Harness, you will say, okay, this is all the things I want to achieve as a business. Like, this is the performance of it, this is the security criteria I need, this is the quality I need. And we would make sure that happens. If the code came out that didn't do it because the fundamental LLMs changed, we'll make sure of that doesn't happen. And that's why you need that check and balance layer. You cannot completely rely on just AI by itself. Like, same with, like, as a consumer, if you go to a ChatGPT and ask things, you may get different things. As a human, you become the expert user who knows what to do with it. Is it useful or not? Is it accurate or not? And you wouldn't know that. In the case of software engineering, Harness is that layer. Like, we are helping the engineers to do that part. Like, that you write the code with vibe coding, and we become that expert layer to make sure it all working well as you would expect for your business.
In the checks and balances, if you have harness deployed, you're essentially replacing at least some layer of like a QA, right? So when you are in rooms with executives trying to make this decision of how much they're investing in like a harness versus talent, what are you hearing?
At this point, I don't think most executives or most companies have gotten to the point where uh, they don't have enough work, even if AI drives a lot of automation for them. It's like if you talk to any software engineering team in any company, they have massive backlogs of these are the 5,000 things that we need to take care of, or these are 2,000 things, and the business demand on what you need to build is very high. So all the efficiency gains that you're providing are going into taking care of the backlog. Yes, it's a valid question. At some point, would we need less software engineers? We probably would to do these kind of tasks. But right now there's just big backlog, so people are taking those efficiency gains and doing more things. So it's increasing their innovation velocity, is increasing the quality of their software, increasing the security, reliability of their software. They're shipping more things. So that's where the efficiency gains are going. We're also seeing like kind of ironic, you have like two kind of software developers, like the classically trained software developers, like, you go to four-year engineering degree, learn computer science, software engineering. And we have like 35, 40 million software engineers in the world like that. But then and maybe we would need less of them at some point. But we have a new class of software developers coming up, which are these like citizen developers who don't need to go to four-year college degree and learn computer science now with AI. They need to be expert in their domains, whatever the domain is: manufacturing, healthcare, airline, retail, and now they can work with AI to create the software code. So in overall, would the number of software developers in the world increase or decrease? It's hard to say, because you may have more people be able to do the job that will create more software. What that does mean though, like whoever creates a software, whether it's like AI or like a trained software engineer, or or a vibe coding developer, like a not trained software developer, all of that code, someone has to make sure it works, right? That's where we put a lot of our energy on. Like, the code is increasing heavily and may increase 10x. So like, the pressure on testing and deployments and all is so high, they're not able to keep up with it. So we are not seeing any job loss yet. We're seeing like people just can't keep up. So we are providing them tools to keep up.
You said maybe a couple of times, so you're not going to be bold enough to make some prediction like Dario Amodei saying that there's going to be massive unemployment.
I think I'm not making that. I think as humans will always find ways to do things, or other thing, other jobs and other innovation things. I feel like our appetite as humankind for innovation and new inventions is pretty much endless. Most of the times when you create some new technology and it feels like we're gonna see a massive job loss, and we find different ways to use the technology to create something completely different that creates a lot more jobs. So yes, there's a job transformation gonna happen, but does it create massive unemployment? We'll see.
Well, it's already happening. Layoffs.fyi, I'm looking at the website. As of today, over 120,000 tech employees have been laid off this year in 2025, 150,000 or so in 2024. When you're building software like harnesses, and you're even talking to your own engineers whom you've described as being AI first, how do you think about what you're building? Do you think about it as, I'm building something that can be very efficient for companies, and that efficiency may translate into like less headcount? And how do you feel about the impact that software like Harness has on the labor market?
Yeah, we are definitely building a lot of efficiency. It's and now it's like, what do you do with the efficiency? It's either the only two things a business can do. Like, say you have like a business has uh, you know 1,000 developers, and now like and the thousand out of the 1,000 developers, like half of them are doing these kind of jobs like testing, deployment, security, compliance, those kind of things, and we can do it at like 60, 70, 80% more efficiently. So yeah, so you have more your people freed up. So now what do you do with that? There are two things. One is you can lay them off and have more profits. Or second is you can build more things with the people freed up and drive more revenue and more better user experiences and all. So far, we are mostly seeing the second. We are not seeing like the enterprise that we work with, like, banks and airlines and insurance companies and retailers. And we are not seeing that they are laying off in ways, that because they got on AI efficiencies yet. They're getting efficiencies, but they're heavily investing them back in driving the businesses. Where you see layoffs is more on actually the tech companies who overinvested or overhired, in still in the zero interest rate kind of days. But that might change over time. Like, the efficiency gains are real for the AI. And as you get these efficiency gains, like, yes, some businesses might make sense to put them back in the profits and, like, have less people in their workforce. And, we have to figure out as society, how do those people who freed up, how do we retrain them into doing something else? And, what would that something else will mean?
I hope that more companies are building more, but it's just really hard to see and to be optimistic and to see the point of view that you just described when, we're looking at, in general, this year so far through Thanksgiving, at least according to one recruitment firm, Challenger Gray and Christmas, 1.1 million layoffs announced, which, with the exception of like the pandemic, we'd have to go back to 2009 to find a year with greater layoffs. I'm not so much trying to challenge you too much on what you're hearing, but I do think that it's difficult for anyone to hear what you're saying and also see this side by side and wonder what's real and what's not. And I think also at a individual level, I have a lot of friends in tech and who are in software engineering, and I'm even thinking about your own employees. Like, do they think, am I building something that will replace me one day? And how, kind of sad that kind of feeling is if they are making their agents so much better, that one day they won't have the job they have today. So help me understand your perspective more around this, and maybe if you could make sense of these other layoff numbers that we are seeing.
Yeah. I think that's a great question, and you have good data and numbers there, probably more than I have. I have more of the anecdotal numbers that we see from our customers, our clients. We normally don't see the larger enterprises laying off because of AI efficiencies. We are seeing laying off because of other reasons, like macro reasons. Their business is not doing well to begin with. They need to cut costs. But, that said, it's a matter of time. Like, if the efficiency gains are coming, and that will create that you will need less software engineers. So now the second part of your question on how we think of it, like, our engineers think of it. We look at the AI. You cannot stop the progression of technology. If we don't do it, other folks are building to do the jobs better. How do we solve the problems of, like, what happens to the job market around it? Would we need less software engineers? As I said, I'm more on the optimistic side. Like, I've been in the world of software engineering for a long time. We used to write code in assembly language, just like a very low level language. And then people came with like a higher level language like C++. People say, okay, now you have C++ that does 80% of the job. You won't need engineers, and the number of engineers increased significantly because you could build so much more software. Then from C++, there's a new language came out, Java, which will do like 70% of what C++ you had to do manually as coders. And people thought, oh, we would have less engineers needed because Java does like 70% of what engineers had to do. But we needed much more engineers because so much more software could be built with that now. So, it's yet to be seen, like what happens there. So I'm still on the optimist side, like, what will happen. Yes, the numbers that you mentioned, like, those are real numbers. How much they're attributed to AI versus not. But the reality is AI is a massive change in how software engineering is done. And we think, like, a lot of the work could be done through AI, and AI would do better. And does it free up the engineers to do higher quality work and higher abstraction work? And can they be more innovative? And what does that mean? That's what we're gonna see over the next many years. Like, how does that evolve into?
What advice would you have for young people who are thinking about the choice they made to go into computer engineering college? They graduated and they're in this market and they're early talent. I mean, I was talking to the CEO of an online education platform, and he advises young people to look somewhere else, not go and study computer engineering. You're seeing that already reflected in graduation rates today. But for those who already put the time in to study this, what advice do you have for those young, early talent developers and engineers about what they should do in this moment?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I do advise people like, expertise in some domain is extremely important. Like, if you are doing just software engineering, I would rather also add to it like robotics, or like, that you have expertise in like your skills around software engineering combined with robotics is more useful. Or like say, around manufacturing, or around, healthcare, or around like, biotech research. But some domain and combined with the software engineering skill set is what I normally advise younger people. Like, if you study that, the domain expertise combined with your engineering expertise will become will be a more valuable skill in the job market.
So you're saying to be, your base knowledge is generally the same if you're a software engineer, but if you have industry specific knowledge on top of that, that's really where you can potentially find new opportunities. Is that the right way to interpret what you're saying?
Exactly, yes. And a deep knowledge on a particular industry and domain of some kind.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, they're still young. I don't know if they
Yes.
have deep knowledge yet. I guess they gotta gain that somehow. Let's talk lastly about the other stakeholders. The whole point of macro talk is that we go through all the stakeholders, and I want to understand the implications to each. And so we've talked about consumers, we've talked about your own engineers, some of the younger talent. Let's talk about investors now, and companies that are looking to make these big, multi-year commitments to a company like yours, and the valuation. You do have plans to go public in this market, and I know you said obviously the conditions will dictate. What is the benefit of going public? I mean, I talk to a lot of companies who think that the costs are prohibitive, the risks, and the extra work. So what will going public enable for Harness?
Well, if you look at the right healthy state of any business, in like an American business, is to operate as a public company where there is high degree of liquidity for all stakeholders, whether it's investors, whether it's employees, whoever holds your shares. And I do think like, it's healthy for a business to have that kind of accountability and that kind of flexibility and liquidity. And that's what I do believe is the advantage. Yes, the traditional advantages of going public, like raising capital, you can raise in private markets these days. Having some liquidity for your early employees and all, you can also do in private markets. But still, it's not like a fully liquid, flexible stock. So yes, there are downsides of it. Like, the problem with the public markets are they're very short-term thinking. And that's where I see a lot of pushback around going public sometimes. But I do think it's a healthy state, healthy, accountable state, your flexibility for everyone involved. And I would, I hope and I expect, like, if we can get more to a place where, you can be in a public company, but still have your investor base that's believe in the long term and not very short term thinking. And, that's ideal balance.
I mean, as a journalist, I've always gravitated toward covering public companies because there's also more transparency
Yes.
with what you're doing. But the other question with this is, as investors are looking at when this bubble is going to end, I mean, in some ways, Harness's legacy and history suggests that you guys, obviously predate the bubble in a big way, and that your product is not dependent on this sort of hype cycle. But does it worry you, the amount of concentration there is? And what do you expect the future to look like?
Yeah, I do think there's a bubble, and I do think the bubble will burst. But I also think bit of a bubble is a healthy thing for any time a big transformative moment happens, whether it's with like internet or mobile or whatever it is. And there's a new way of doing something. There will be maybe 2 or 3 companies will succeed in solving that problem in a different way, but you'll have 10 companies that get started. There'll be 10 companies will get funded, and out of 10, 2 or 3 will come out as winners. So you have, and then when the everything settles down, the 8 companies shut down, and you think, okay, the bubble burst, and only 2 are winners. But you have 2 companies who succeeded and transform the things. Like, in the .com time, you will have like from Amazon and Google and everyone, right? AI is kind of the same. For every, like you have the big foundational model providers. There is concentration and there will be corrections and all will happen in there. But every problem, if you look at like an AI for whatever it is, AI for coding, AI for DevOps, AI for cybersecurity, AI for manufacturing, AI for robotics, AI for healthcare, there will be winners in each one of those because it is a transformative moment. And some of them, the winners will be like the previous companies who have transformed themselves. Some of them, the winners will be brand new companies that come in. But the reality is 8 out of 10 will shut down. So then, yes, it feels like a bubble burst, but that's a healthy thing for innovation that 10 companies compete and to win. And that's how the new set of innovation happens. This time, the only thing I would say is it seems a bit more like instead of 10 out companies for everything, you have probably like 15, 20 companies out of for every problem. So you may see like you still may only see like 2 or 3 will win. And I always, from our perspective, when I look at Harness, we look at like, okay, all of these things are just noise. Let's build a healthy business. We build a very healthy business. Like, we look at like high gross margins. We are not a company like, which running at like, that we are selling our service for $100 and it costs us like, $100 to serve the service. We run at high gross margins, healthy business, invest, manage the money very responsibly, build it for the long term. And like, yes, we'll see things will happen around us, deliver value to our customers, innovate. That's what we focus on.
I mean, I think that the fact that you don't upsell for, extra like AI features, it feels very customer friendly. And I do wonder if you go public, like the pressure to grow, right, will only increase. And if you're going to have to compromise your values, which of your values would you never compromise on?
Well, to us is really the number one value for us to deliver value to our customers, like solve the problem for them. AI is just a tool to solve the problem. Like we look at, can we have a efficient, reliable software delivery process where you write code and the code is gets the hand of your consumers quickly and reliably. What would you need? So as I said, like we have been building AI since 2017 for DevOps. But we don't market ourselves as that is the main thing. We are solving a problem for you. Yes, we use whatever the best AI is available to do that. We have been doing it before LLMs and before Agentic AI. So we don't charge you for AI, we charge you for solving the problem. And if we don't solve the problem for you, you don't pay us for that. Like, yeah.
No, I mean, I wanted to bring that up because I find that to be, again, a very customer friendly proposition.
I think a big part of it also, like, there are a lot of companies and products where LLMs do 80-90% of the job. And now it's like, that is your primary cost that you become like just a layer on top of this. Our case is very different. Like LLMs only do like 10 to 20% of what we do. We do so much more on top of the entire process orchestration to the agentic orchestration to the amount of work that we have been doing on top of the LLMs is where our primary value prop is.
I have one more question, and I'd love to know if there's something that we haven't talked about that you wanted to bring up. And my last question really is if you feel that there are any blind spots in the coverage of AI right now.
A bit of the blind spot I see is like, how enterprises can get value from AI, and which is really these enterprise workflows. Enterprise workflows are around like, HR and, accounting and, software engineering and manufacturing, all kind of these workflows that enterprises can get value from AI. And what does it really mean to get that value? Like, and that's, I do think is, it's not covered yet because some of the results are not real, or not as strong. That's why we share a lot of results, because we'll say, if we talk about AI in a generic way, people will be like, they roll their eyes. So it's like, what value people are getting these large enterprises and how do we make it really work for and for them? That's that part, it would be great to cover more. Yes.
What questions should clients be asking, their providers about, like, how do they vet? How would you advise executives to vet the value of an AI investment?
I think a big part of that is see the real results, like, the before and after results that can work for them, for a particular enterprise and client. Because as I said, like the number one thing that's missing is that context. And the context is all about a particular business, like a particular business, a particular enterprise, a client has so many different ways of doing things. And if we cannot work for them, it's useless. Right. So, and that's what they should drill down when they ask people, how does it work for them? How is it specific for them? How is meet their needs for their business?
Anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't get to today. And congratulations again on this huge raise and new valuation.
Thanks for inviting me here. Great conversation here. You pose some very good questions, and honestly, I don't have answers to most of them. No one has answers to what will happen in the job markets and the labor markets and what will happen to software engineering. I think we are in the early stages of what AI can do, and I do see a lot of gains are going to happen. Now it's how we get to where the world gets retrained versus not. I'm on the optimistic side. I hope we can find the use of all of the engineering talent and the smart people who want to innovate in many other ways. And time will tell where we end up there.
I thought you had great answers. Your perspective is very important as you're one of the key builders of all this. And I know I said that was my last question, but just because you reminded me, we're in this interim period now, with talent and all the development that is happening with AI. So are there a few areas that you would advise people in general to look at, if they are feeling like they're going to get laid off, if they are already getting laid off, if they are in this transition, if we're all in this transition period? You talked a lot about the context, but is there anything else beyond that you feel can give anybody a leg up?
I would say if you're a software engineer and you worry about AI taking your job or you being laid off because of AI, the best defense you can do is to learn to be very proficient with AI. Because the people who would have their jobs are the ones who can work very, very well with AI. And when people say okay, what's the quality of code that AI is writing? It really depends on how proficient someone is. If you give the same AI coding to an engineer who has really, really worked on on mastering how to use it properly, they will get great results. An engineer who's not worked on mastering how to do it, they will get not so good results. So any software engineer who's worried about their job being taken by AI, I will always take them. The best defense is be very good in using AI, and that's how you'll keep your job.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great to have you on, and I hope to have you back again real soon.
Thank you so much.